Ladies and gentlemen, presenting the Professor Greg Dooley and the pundit Steve Clark. Men, take the mic.
It's the Professor and the Pundit with Greg Dooley and Steve Clark. We're presented by Nick Hopwood, who's a certified financial planner, founder, and president of Peak Wealth Management. Retire with peak confidence. We highly recommend going to Nick's website at peakwm.com. And, we're going to talk about what's happened in the world of college football, that misery loves company. We're going to preview a little bit about Michigan State and what's going on in the world of college football off the field. But if fans were reeling after Washington, they are on the floor this week after limping out of Champaign, only able to muster a single touchdown in the 21-7 defeat, Greg.
Yeah, losing to Texas was clearly one thing. And I'd say losing to Washington, even in the way we did, was another. It was a rematch of the national championship. This is a whole different ballgame we're in, Steve, and we feared this last week. What if we lose? And it probably didn't matter how we lost this game, but it kind of matters how we lost this game by not being able to muster with the mistakes we made. We're struggling with this one. And fans are struggling. I do my little mood index.
Yes,
right?
It's got to be at a 4-year low.
So, many of you know I poll the fans after each game on Twitter, and I've been tracking this since 2013. The relative mood of the fan base on a scale of 1 to 40 to 100. And yeah, Steve, you nailed it. We are down in where we were before the 2021 season started. Really at that point, which was Jim Harbaugh should be fired. It was almost surprising in some sense that Warde Manuel gave him a show of confidence after the miserable COVID season. We're back there, and it's a short amount of time, in this season. That's where the fans are. And by the way, the other thing they stopped doing, they stopped mentioning how the national championship affected their mood. Like people would say, well, in a normal year, my mood would be a 70, but I'm an 85 because of the national. They're not saying that anymore.
So the honeymoon is over. The mood index. What numbers did you have them down?
Oh, it's
in the sixes now?
I have a highly scientific process Steve, that I haven't finished yet, but it's 60s.
So
it's
so
rough.
Sometime after the national election, we'll figure out where the mood index is going to be. The funny thing about it is, and I said that to Grant Corey course of the week, was that if Michigan beat Illinois in Champaign, a ranked team, this would have been their best victory of the season. But instead, the loss was considered to be the most unacceptable of all losses, which is kind of contradicts in itself. But I think it's the way the Wolverines played coming out of a bye week. Turnovers continue to plague the Wolverines, 3 more turnovers for a total of 15 on the season. They had 8 last year through 15 games. Michigan's played just slightly less than half that. And Jack Tuttle, who everybody was saying that he's got to be the answer because we've tried everything else. Well, he fumbled and threw for another interception again in about 7 quarters of football. Donovan Edwards also fumbled in this one. And quite frankly, Greg, all the quarterback options have been tried except for Jaden Davis, and none are very good. And as far as Jaden Davis is concerned, he's not supposed to be playing because his family doesn't want him to be in that particular situation very first year out. So all 3 of them have proven to be the worst starters in the Big Ten. It is true. To see the backups at Wisconsin, Indiana, and Purdue be successful over the last few weeks shows it's more than just the quarterbacks themselves.
You touched on it, but that was the hope going into this game, that Washington was Tuttle shaking off the rust. Yep. And Michigan was nearly a touchdown favorite going into this. I was actually surprised at that. But the hope was Tuttle's the answer, and that was even the talk pregame with friends and things like that. He just needed more reps. That was a pipe dream. And, you thought maybe the fumble, well, that was rust. He hasn't carried the ball much at Washington. Boom, ball pops out again. Early on, missing receivers, Steve. We've talked about this. In college football, you used to miss receivers all the time back in our day when we went to school. Passing was a little more difficult, was a little more challenging to do. You can't do it anymore in college football, and we missed multiple wide-open receivers. It was bad. Yeah, fans are reeling. And so where does this leave us, Steve? What are your questions?
Well, I do have some questions, but one of the things that I've always talked about when forecasting how teams are going to go, it comes down to me 4 simple things: quarterback play, offensive line play, defensive line play, and where you're playing the game. And in this matchup, Michigan was at a distinct disadvantage in 3 of those 4. Quarterback is a mess. Offensive line is battered and ineffective. The defensive line is good, but you were playing in an environment in Champaign that they were looking forward to for several years. It was the first time that Illinois, as a ranked team, hosted a ranked team in 24 years. Yeah. And then you had the throwbacks and the 3 days of celebration leading up to it. Bret Bielema says this is the first time I felt a home field advantage in his 4 years at Illinois. But my biggest question now, with the playoffs out of reach, and Colson Loveland admitted as such, we're out now. We're just now about wrecking other people's seasons. Do either Will Johnson, Mason Graham, Kenneth Grant, or Colson Loveland, 4 guys who could be taken in the first round in the NFL draft, 3 of those guys could be drafted very high in the first round of the NFL draft, do they start thinking about making a business decision?
As in, we're going to shut her down and get ready for the NFL draft. Yeah.
What more is there to play for?
Well, there is more to play for, and that's one of the ironies of the NIL era is that these guys sign deals with companies and people, Champion Circle, assuming they were playing this year and using their brand as a college athlete. Not saying they can't use it anymore if they shut it down, but I'm assuming in some of those contracts it assumes you are playing as if you are able to play. That might keep them here. Not just the money, but the contracts and other things. I know there's way more money available, in theory, in the NFL draft, especially for these guys, right? And it's not just them, by the way. There's other guys that could do the same thing. We're just talking about guys who might be in the top 15 of the NFL draft next year. So I think the NIL stuff does matter. I think it could keep guys, say, in the regular season, bowls, that kind of thing at the tail end. I can almost assume that these guys won't be participating in whatever bowl if Michigan makes a bowl, which is a big if at the moment. Suddenly, Steve. So we'll see. But that could. You get what I'm saying? I mean, there is the Champion Circle money is typically paid out over time, and the other endorsements they've signed and deals they've made with companies, with any brands they've dealt with, do assume often that they're competing this year and will be out there extending their brand.
Will Johnson left the game with another injury, and we don't know the extent of it at the time of this recording. So I don't know how long, but it's something you have to think about. And sometimes you may have to divest yourself to make sure that you're going to be in a good position not to be hurt when it comes to the combine or for your pro day. This is, a brand new neighborhood
that
we're all living in.
Everyone's listening to us. We're all sad.
I think it's better than being angry because there's a lot of people that are absolutely angry. And this is where I wonder if things have gone just a little bit overboard in people's 24-hour to 48 reaction about every coach needing to be fired, about everybody being worthless and weak. Now drop and give me 20 type of attitude because I'm frustrated and mad. And other things that Michigan fans are really ticked off right about now. I think we talked about this last week, that Michigan has an opportunity that when people are trying to raise $50 million, where is it going to come from? Well, Michigan is one of the few schools not to have direct advertising inside the stadium, and that could be kind of a bit of a windfall for them if they actually decided to do that. But there's a lot of pride in being one of the only places not to do that. And Ward Manuel, the athletic director, came out just a few days after we recorded and said, it might be a possibility we're going to accept some on-field advertising from now on.
All of our listeners, I'm sure, know that that's a fact, and that's a unique quality at Michigan. It's also at Notre Dame that we don't have any permanent advertising in the stadium. We've even tried to do some things on the concourse, and they got taken down. So in the past. So one of the things that's in play is this, of course. And, of course, they sent out a survey to season ticket holders and I suppose other people, Steve. I got it. And one of the questions was basically, of these 8 ways to raise money, which affects season ticket holders, et cetera, rank them in order. And there wasn't an option for, no, sir, I don't like any of these. And as our friend Seth Fisher from MGO Blog, I'm paraphrasing him, but it was basically a, quote, which way would you like to die question, which with no options. Would you like to pay more for tickets? How would you rank that? How about the field goal net? How about something on the field? How about advertising all over the stadium? Right. There wasn't, hey, how about we stop paying back all the revenue we send back to the school, which would suddenly, from an accounting change, add about $20 million. There wasn't, as I said, an option of, no, we'll figure it out, or you don't like this so much it'll change your experience. No, there was a comment box at the end where I'm sure people unloaded.
Yes. There wasn't enough lines to write down.
I'm going to use a word. This is a seasoned Michigan fan perspective, though. I'll tell you, I talked to my students in multiple classes about this phenomenon that we don't have advertising. Most of them are not even aware that it's really a thing. Oh, yeah, come to think of it, I guess I don't see any ads. And also, here's the other part. I don't think they care. They're advertised 7 different ways this Sunday on their social media apps and everything. It's part of the culture. I don't think they care. Why does Michigan care so much? It's pure margin. And what I mean is putting a Coca-Cola sign up, zip, 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 that they probably put up themselves and provide in your stadium doesn't cost you a dime. And someone might pay $1 million for that privilege. So it goes straight to the bottom line of the athletic department. That's why they're focusing on that, right?
Sure.
Putting a patch on a jersey, other than a few people in the equipment room zipping that on, doesn't really cost you anything, right? It's really easy to do. And that's why they're going right to that.
Because the alternative is appealing directly to the fan base to say, we're having a luxury tax being put onto your season tickets. Remember when Bill Martin brought this up, the PSD, and changing the word, so it didn't sound like a seat license.
Yes.
It was preferred seating donation, acronyms.
And now it's contribution, by the way, because of the tax consequences implied by a donation. Now it's a C. It's a preferred seating contribution. But anyway,
it took a while for people to get on board, and people eventually will get on board. But the thing is, if you can generate money in different avenues, I think the people will be happier about it. And I think it could make a difference in a couple of wins if they go ahead and do this, which I think is probably the most important thing. I think Washington was extremely happy beating Michigan a couple of weeks ago on their home turf. I don't think anybody was going, well, I prefer they not have that Alaskan Airlines thing on each side of the 30-yard line. I would have taken the loss over seeing those signs. Well, who's saying that?
I'm picturing one grungy guy wearing a flannel in Seattle who's upset about it, but that's about it.
Yeah. The older you are, the more pride you have in the way it used to be. It signified a Michigan difference compared to everybody else. And I'm sure people bristled seeing the Big Ten logo on the fields at every Big Ten stadium too. But this is going to be a little bit different. The students, I don't blame them. I mean, they probably don't go to many road games where they see every replay blanketed first with who sponsored the replay.
Yes.
So when you see a replay on the giant scoreboard, you could eventually see Henry Ford Hospital, or it's going to be some hospital, or it's going to be some injury lawyer that's going to bring you this replay, because those are the people that advertise on the local news in Detroit. It's basically down to car dealerships, health administrators, and injury lawyers. Those are the 3 big things.
Sure. Food and beverage, too, I think you're going to get in there. I do think they will abstain from having an official gambling sponsor. Michigan State tried that and got all kinds of backlash. It's coming. I'll just say one more thing for seasoned fans like us. We just feel like we've been nickeled and dimed over time. And here's another one. We understand that things have changed. I think there's a lot of changes the athletic department itself can make and focus. There's other ways for them to earn revenue. By the way, Steve, at what point last year during our national championship run were you breathlessly waiting to go to mgoblue.com to see what new feature that they had about the team? The answer, I'm assuming, is never. That hasn't happened once. Yet the NFL, through the NFL Network and other things they've done, has created a for-profit media center with Red Zone and all the show Good Morning Football and all of the things, Rich Eisen and all these things that are really good products for fans. The athletic department could do more things like that to provide services to fans and advertise on them. There's other ways they can generate revenue. So we'll see where this goes.
But let's not forget, the Big Ten Network has Rotel.
Right, Rotel. Well, you bring up the Big Ten Network. They've done a really good job putting out a quality product on their network with shows, with documentaries. They generate so much money that Denard Robinson and Mike Martin are suing because they use those things. So, but there are a lot of options for them. There wasn't a ton going on good that we can talk about. Look, we found some ways to get the ball to Samaj Morgan was a positive. Mullings, I think, is a great back, and he wasn't working with much, Steve, but made some nice plays when we needed them.
Michigan actually had more total yards than Illinois. And Luke Altmaier was held to 80 yards passing, which I believe is a career low for him as a starter. I tried looking it up, and you realize, well, is that spot duty or is that starting? But the defense held Illinois to 3 of 11 on third down, 267 total yards. When you look at the team stats, he was like, man, Michigan probably won this game until you saw the turnovers.
Yeah.
0 turnovers for Illinois, Michigan with 3, and they just happened in bad spots, deep in Illinois territory or deep within their own territory, and Illinois capitalized it.
Yeah, and one more standout. I got to shout out Mason Graham. You mentioned him earlier. He was taking on double and triple teams, man, and getting through and making an impact. It was impressive. So that's all, though. There's really not much else, Steve.
What do you think of those CBS guys wearing those throwback outfits at the beginning of the game?
I thought it was really cool. There was lots of fun stuff. Whenever you do a wild departure from your, and try to do a throwback uniform, there's different opinions. I really thought they did a cool job with their helmets, Illinois, by depicting a leather helmet. It had kind of a 3D quality to it.
Yes, it did.
I thought it was cool. And
from a distance, you couldn't tell the difference.
Yeah, and their throwback uniforms, they did a variation of the striped uniforms that they wore back in 1924. And I thought that was really cool. Like, I'd like to have one of those. If I had any, interest in any kind of involvement with Illinois, I would get one of those. I thought it was cool, and I know there's a lot of different feelings about it. And they obviously made a big deal of this special day, which, I think is really important. I got a lot of runs, Steve, because I put out a lot of content around Red Grange and these games and how Yost got him in 1925. So that was fun. So there was a lot of cool stuff. It's just that we're usually talking about these kinds of things on the side of Michigan winning. Because that's
right.
And that's the hard part. What else, Steve? I did go to the hockey game Friday night. That was nice. Oh, it was a beautiful day, by the way, on Saturday. Other than the game, if you were out and about in Michigan, it was a clear, sunny day. It got up to 70. It was beautiful.
Perfect fall weather. You see the leaves out in the trees, but there was no wind, and it was 65, 70 degrees. That's what a fall Saturday should be, but that rarely ever happens.
Yeah, so that was really nice. But the hockey game Friday night was a blast. In fact, shout out to our neighbor and friend, Joe. My man Kelly was up there, and our fourth was none other than Nick Hopwood joined us. We got to actually sit on the bench during warm-ups. So as the players were skating around and they're doing their thing, we got to watch from the bench, which is really unique.
Sweet.
Those boards are a little lower than I thought. I thought they were a little higher because it looks like those guys really have to work to get over them. But you can kind of see how they get over. That was one takeaway. There was a really funny incident, though, in the game, Steve. I don't know if you caught this, but St. Cloud State, and by the way, Michigan won 3-0 on that night. St. Cloud State was a really good hockey team, and they fired a puck late in the game at Michigan, and it got lost. It didn't go in the goal.
What do you mean it got lost?
We knew that. It disappeared. But it clearly somehow got embedded somewhere in the goalie himself, and they have all that equipment and all those pads.
Looked like the Stay Puft Marshmallow Man.
So, yeah, he jiggled around a little bit. He took off his gloves.
What is this, a striptease now?
Dude, 30 seconds pass with the gloves off and everything. There's 4 refs, 3 of them are around him at this point. Other players, a minute goes by. 2 minutes goes by, Steve. He is checking. Yes, they pulled his back of his pads off where his butt is to kind of look down. And of course, this gets a huge reaction.
So this went from a striptease to an interrogation.
Yeah, so we went almost 3 minutes, and then it looked like they just gave up. I recorded all this. You can see it on Invictus.com and on YouTube. They stopped, and I go, I think they're just saying it's good. It's gone. Like hopefully not in some orifice or something, right? But the puck is gone.
Hopefully the player would be able to figure that one out.
Yes, and I believe this to be true. And right as they said, we got to play the game, it's over, the guy did one more look, the goalie did one more look in his sleeve, and it was jammed in a weird spot in his sleeve, and the puck came out. And of course, this had a big roar of the crowd. It was really funny, man. It was funny to watch. It probably made it more fun that Michigan was winning at the time, too.
It just proves that Michigan goalies are magicians.
They are indeed. Thanks to Coach Dorado and the hockey program for hosting us. It was really, really cool. We had this special little seat, too, with swivel chairs and desks that are right off of the ice. Oh, and see, I had a few students who were in the Children of Yost, which is the student section. And between the second and third period intermission, that's when they do their Blues Brothers dance. I went down there. I was talking to my students, and then all of a sudden the Blues Brothers dance. So I had to do it with the Children of Yost. It was a blast. So
Sweet.
That is a bucket list, because that's where it all started, the Blues Brothers dance. It started. Now we do it at basketball games now. We do it at football. But it's really a Yost tradition is where it started. So it was a lot of fun.
And now it's halftime on The Professor and the Pundit. And Michigan football, like the Dow and the NASDAQ and the S&P 500, took the escalator to the top in a bull market, but is taking the elevator down like stocks in a bear market right now. Are you an investor or are you a trader? When do institutions sell their losers to soften their tax gains and buy again 30 days later? We don't have all the answers, which is why you should contact Nick Hopwood at Peak Wealth Management. He's been tracking trends for years and understands it's an election year with the Fed looking to lowering rates as well. And he has avenues to reduce your tax expenses. So go to peakwm.com. That's peakwm.com and begin to think about how you can retire with peak confidence.
Hey, October 24th, Steve, U of M Club of Lansing at Royal Scott. I will put a link in the show notes and on invictors.com. I am speaking to that club at their annual awards dinner. It's Thursday before the Michigan State game. I think it's 6 to 9. I think the mayor of Lansing is going to be there too, Steve, which is interesting. Yeah, fancy. I'm going to do a mini version of what I do in the history of college athletics, which would be a lot of fun. So if you are or have Lansing area friends, people, go to mvictors.com or check out the link. I'd love to see some of the Professor and the Pundit people there. It's going to be a fun night, and it's a bowling alley as well, Steve. We're going to be in the banquet room upstairs, and maybe we'll get a beer or a White Russian if we're like the Big Lebowski and get a lane, as they like to say afterward, all right? Oh, we got Michigan State, so we got to talk about the Paul Bunyan Trophy.
Perfect timing if you're going to be at Michigan State to give a speech during Michigan State week. So it's great to get into it at the time. Now, one team, Greg, in the state of Michigan won the bye week, and that was Michigan State. They beat Iowa 32-20. The Spartans' first 4 plays on offense, Greg, were 8, 19, and 11 yards. Michigan, in contrast, opened the game with a 3-and-out for 2 yards. The Spartans shut down an Iowa running game that ran all over Washington a week before. This was a real surprise for me in the pick'em segment that Iowa laid an egg and that Michigan State, seemingly on offense and defense, knew what to do with a week off. Their quarterback, Aiden Childs, probably had his best game of the season. He's in the lower half of the Big Ten, but it's better than where the Michigan quarterbacks are right now. He has 6 touchdowns, 9 interceptions, has a tremendous amount of upside in the years to come. And Saturday against the Hawkeyes was an improvement, especially for a team that usually humiliates young quarterbacks in that Iowa defense. Iowa just kind of looked average. Nick Marsh is their leading receiver. He is just a freshman for Michigan State. And the Michigan State defense, not much is being said about them, but they force turnovers and they make stops in the backfield. They're tied for 3rd in the Big Ten in interceptions. They're 4th in tackles for loss. And that just tells me that Michigan is going to have to find a way to score, despite having a battered and ineffective offensive line right now, and start figuring out what the quarterback that they have and decide to play with, what can that person do, and utilize their strengths, because Michigan State's not going to be a pushover.
There's 2 things. There's a historic trend for first-year coaches to win this game, and obviously, technically, both the coaches are first-year coaches, but Sharon did coach in that role last year. So if you believe in these kinds of things, you know, this trend, it's Jonathan Smith and the advantage of that. And, of course, a rivalry game at State, the way I think rivalries are very personal in their nature. And people say, well, you can't root for this or you can't root for that. If you can't wear red, you can't wear green, all these things. And I don't buy any of that because I think it's very personal. We all have different family relationships that are affected by rivalries. the one thing I like to say about State is that it hurts more to lose to Michigan State for me. It feels better to beat Ohio State. It's two separate feelings. It stings to lose to Michigan State. I'm not saying it doesn't sting to lose to Ohio. You want to beat them, but it hurts more. But it feels better to beat Ohio State because that's who we measure ourselves against, right? So that's what's on the line. And, of course, we still own every trophy that we can win, right? And they're all in Schebecker Hall. We lose this one, we lose one of them, and that's the Paul Bunyan Trophy, a trophy we never wanted. It was a gimmick by the governor at the time, G. Menon Williams. His nickname was Soapy. Steve, you know why he's Soapy? Why they called him Soapy?
Because Soupy Sales was taken up?
Nope, because the name Menon is the Menon soap and toiletry products by Menon.
By Menon.
Yes, the jingle that is in any 50-year-old man's mind, the Menon advertisements from back in the day. Well, his family's company was Menon Products, and he got the nickname Soapy because they make toilet-based products and all that, toiletries and all that stuff. He created this trophy. Michigan never wanted it. It's supposed to be a locker room trophy because the thing is huge. And Michigan State started the tradition of taking the top of it off and parading it on the field. And so Michigan started to do that as well. And yes, Jim Harbaugh was responsible for that because he said, if they're going to take it out of the locker room, so are we, and told them to go ahead and take it on the field. It is an ugly trophy. It is the trophy, though, that inspired the company Rivalry Trophy, Steve, who makes all the different replicas of the trophies, like the Floyd of Rosedale, Paul Bunyan's axe, and the Paul Bunyan trophy. There were State fans, and this is what inspired them, is they wanted their own little Paul Bunyan trophy in their office. They sent out designs, they had it cut back, and it's a really, really well done. So shout out to the guys at Rivalry Trophy.
You mentioned toilets earlier. The loser of this game will have their season go down the toilet, by the way. It will be flushed right through, which begs the question. Michigan and Michigan State have identical records right now at 4-3. Is Michigan State or Michigan more likely to go to a bowl game? Which one?
The fact that you're asking that question really hurts.
Yes.
And this one, the answer might be settled by the winner of this game. This is what it might be for.
But I want to know right now because I see Michigan State's winnable games as Michigan, Rutgers, and Purdue. I see Michigan's winnable games as Michigan State and Northwestern. Yeah. Michigan, to me, is battling for a ceiling of 6-6.
Ouch. Well, yeah, we're going to talk about Indiana here in a second, but that one's out there, and you didn't mention Indiana. And the fact that we're having a conversation for the State game, and you didn't even mention Indiana as a winnable game says it all.
No.
There's a lot on the line here, guys. Hopefully Will Johnson's back. We need everything we got. If there's a hope that just Tuttle's evolution was just delayed, it was a tough environment on the road. He's going to be more comfortable at home. And we'll get it going, and our defense will show and maybe score. Maybe we're Iowa now.
I think this is what the mid is about, where Michigan can lose to Washington on the road. Washington gets thumped by Iowa. Michigan State beats Iowa at home, and then we beat Michigan State.
Great.
The transitive property does not work for teams in the mid because the teams in the mid can have a good game one week and a bad game the next week, and it doesn't make any sense. Look, around the Big Ten this weekend, Ohio State and Penn State with a week off. Michigan was the dominant headline of the week, but after that, you have to go with Indiana, who continues to rout whoever they play. In a game that Nebraska coach Matt Rule said he didn't see coming, the Hoosiers husked the corn out of Nebraska 56-7. The largest margin of victory in conference play for Indiana in a win since 1945. And they got 28 of those points from a backup quarterback. The Hoosiers are going to win at least 11 games this year in the regular season out of 12. They play Ohio State on November 23rd, the week before the Michigan-Ohio State game. Imagine if Indiana, though, Greg, wins that one in Columbus. Can you imagine that from both perspectives?
Yeah, I cannot. But it's in play. They're really playing good. We're going to get a good look at them. I'm going to get a first-hand look at them, Steve. I'm heading down there November 9th to Bloomington in a game that jokes were made about the trip down there, that we're going to mop them up, even with the team rebuilding. That's a win. as a laugher, but now the joke's on us, Steve.
Yeah.
We could be double-digit underdogs. I don't know what the spread would be today. We're definitely underdogs. Is it double digits? Is it 2 touchdowns? I don't know. That would be a surprising game if we win it. Big time.
Indiana is beating everybody, and they've not trailed this season. And with that being said, Indiana University releasing a statement that their starting quarterback, Curtis Rourke, is out indefinitely with a thumb injury. Now, again, the backup quarterback got 28 points for the Hoosiers in the second half in relief, but this is devastating news for their program that is trying to get to 11 wins this season, and maybe more. Then, if you think Michigan's season is bad and the fans are having a tough time, misery loves company, and that's USC. They did it again, Greg. With the game seemingly in hand, they lost late in the fourth quarter at Maryland, who was winless in conference play. It is their fourth excruciating loss in 5 games, all very late leads. Now, the way Michigan is losing is one thing. The Trojans' way of losing is more agonizing. Maybe there's more hope with USC, but their losses are more agonizing. The probability of winning for USC was 91, 92, and 93% in their losses to Michigan, Minnesota, and USC.
At some point, basically.
Late.
Late.
In the fourth quarter. Those were the probability rates of them winning. The loss to Maryland was 97.5. You take those odds to Vegas, and the odds of them losing those 4 late game leads at the time they did is about 80,000 to 1, Greg. I'm watching an 80,000 to 1 football team in the way USC chokes. I've never seen anything like it. USC was kicking a field goal to go up 9 with 2 minutes to play. Oh, but it got blocked. And then Maryland somehow boat raced down the field in 48 seconds in 5 plays or 6 plays for the go-ahead touchdown, and did it so fast it gave USC time for a game-winning field goal, and they got to the Maryland 40 before failing on downs.
Yeah.
So, I mean...
You think our coaches are under fire.
Oh.
Yeah.
Every question to Lincoln Riley in the post-game press conference at College Park was the equivalent to asking WTF. 13 years ago, Lane Kiffin was fired on the tarmac after landing at LAX. Riley made the plane ride back home, but attendance was checked on the plane. And Riley probably preferred an Uber home from College Park on this one.
Yeah, that's a long ride and an expensive Uber trip.
If you think, Michigan's got it bad, take a look at USC.
Yeah. No, but to your point, though, it's just been such a great season outside of Michigan. It's been so exciting, and everyone thought, like, the transfer portal, it's going to ruin everything. It really hasn't happened. I'm sure ratings are up. Attendance it looks like it's fantastic. It's just been a really wild year.
The transfer portal has shuffled the decks. NIL has shuffled the cards up. And if you play both of them right, you can win in a hurry. Misery Loves Company Part 2, Greg. It's Alabama losing again at Tennessee 24-17. The Tide had a 15-game winning streak over the Vols end in 2022. Now they've lost back-to-back games in Knoxville, and the Vols broke out victory cigars like they won the national championship or something. Alabama has now lost 2 games before November 1st for the first time since 2007. They're still in a playoff, but one more loss could knock them out. They have Missouri and at LSU coming up for them.
The Paul Feinbaum show is going to be a much listen with some of those Alabama callers just going off on Kalen DeBoer, so we'll see, man.
Paul himself always likes to find targets as well. He's got one in Lincoln Riley, and now he may have another one in Kalen DeBoer.
He said this is the poorest disciplined Alabama team on defense he can remember. So on SportsCenter. So that's brutal.
So, Greg, Michigan gave up 21 points to Illinois. But what's worse was Oklahoma giving up 21 points to South Carolina at home in 5 minutes and 20 seconds of the game kicking off. The first 5:20 of the game, the Sooners are down 21-0, and the Sooners, I believe, have called Ann Arbor to see if they have any extra quarterbacks available.
Ouch. That's when you know you're desperate. What about Florida State, man? They've continued to really, really struggle this year.
They have lost again. They lost Friday night, losing to Duke for the first time in history. Pay the wrong guys, and you have the Seminoles, who play Miami this weekend. That could be 1-7. Misery loves company.
No, it sure does. And of course, right after I kind of stated that one truth in college football with all this wild stuff going on was Texas, Steve, that we got to see the best team in the country and they took us down, but that's okay. And they're the real deal. Sure enough, Georgia runs out 23-0 and takes them down in
Austin.
In Austin, man. So
where they threw bottles and the referees overturned plays 5 minutes after the replays on the scoreboard came out.
It turns out if you throw crap on the field, maybe not advertising, but you throw stuff down there, the refs will change a call, apparently, after watching all the replays. But anyway, what did you see here, Steve? Anything else in Texas?
Was I rooting for Texas? Yes, because I wanted the Michigan loss to the Longhorns to sting a little bit less. I want the loss to actually mean something. You lost to the champions. And I don't have a grudge against Texas, so I didn't mind rooting for them. But Georgia reminded people of who they were winning in Austin 30-15. Game of the week next week. The two remaining unbeatens in the SEC square off. Do you have any guess of who they are?
Unbeatens. Is Tennessee one of them?
No, they lost to Arkansas.
I don't know who they are.
LSU and Texas A&M. The two teams that took a big L in week number 1. Those are the two remaining teams, LSU and Texas A&M. They face off this Saturday. College football is not gone the way people expected.
Not at all. Steve, do we have time? Things we only care about.
Absolutely.
Nobody cares.
Everybody knows nobody cares.
No one cares.
Nobody cares! I care.
I got another one, Steve.
You do?
The Lone Cannon commercial.
Okay.
Lone Cannon. Right.
Lone Cannon!
The whole point of that commercial is, well, there's a better way to get a small business loan as opposed to having a cannon full of money shoot it at you and hit you in the gut with a guy that kind of looks like Miz in the commercial, right? That doesn't sound too bad to me, Steve. All I got to do is shout Lone Cannon and look at the cannon shooting money directly, and we'll get it like in about 3 seconds. You know, I'll wear some padded clothes or something and just take the hit of the Lone Cannon. Like, the whole point was you wouldn't want to get your money this way, would you? Yeah, you would. It doesn't seem too bad. Or the Lone Falcon.
I was going to ask you about the Lone Falcon. Do you feel better about that?
Well, I don't want to, something ripping out my eyes, but have you ever tried to get a loan or applied for like a serious loan? It's pretty painful. If I could just scream Lone Cannon, doesn't seem that bad.
Lone Cannon!
Yes, poor guy.
For people who don't know what we're talking about, these are commercials that we see often on CNBC.
We do get quite a few Lone Cannon commercials, but all right.
I don't know if we see that during football games or not, so people may not be sure what we're talking about.
I do appreciate, basically, most companies have sought to entertain us in their commercials. Like, that is the trend. Like, it's got to be funny and clever. Some are horribly not. But they do try to entertain us for those 30 seconds that they have our attention.
Disclaimers are my favorite part. I think I'm going to have something I only care about in future weeks about disclaimers.
Excellent. We can't wait. Steve, I know it doesn't seem like it, but we are still the reigning national champions. Am I right?
Go Blue, Greg.
Go Blue.